is also an editor for Ukraine's new constitution and advisory board member of the Africa International Chamber of Commerce. Good of you to join us this hour, Dr. Robertson. It's been a while since I've seen you. I should also add to your wonderful resume and all of your expertise in government that you served as an advisor of the U.S.-China trade war, and you've addressed China's government on trade relations at the Great Hall of the People in Beijing, China. Let's start there, because one of the things that hasn't really been discussed on the campaign trail is China and the role that the CCP plays in eyeing what's going on in America and perhaps even trying to contribute to some election interference. Talk to me about China and the adversary that we have in them.
Well, thanks for having me, Kelly. It's great to be with you again. I can say in regards to China, the rhetoric is starting to heat up, especially in the last week or so, because if Trump is in office, they know what to expect given the first term. And the tariffs on trade will significantly increase so that we can have more of a trade balance with them. It is incredibly lopsided by hundreds of millions of dollars now. And so the idea is that if we impose those tariffs, that it will encourage more manufacturing here in the United States. And to balance that trade is important. But China views it as a weapon. China views this as not just competition, but they view everything as winner takes all. And what's different, and what I learned, especially with advising on the U.S.-China trade war the first time around, was that they value deception. In America, in American business, that is considered a character flaw. You are dishonest. But in the Chinese culture, you are actually praised if you successfully deceive your opponent or your enemy. So we have to understand, in the last 60 years of the China advisors to the White House have gotten it wrong. 95%, literally, in fact, up to 97% of all of the advisors that advised the presidents for the last 60 years constantly get it wrong because we thought China's trying to turn a new page. They're trying to become more democratic, and as we know from our history, that can be a messy process. And so they kept being forgiving, the Tiananmen Square massacre, all kinds of things that kept happening. We said, that's unfortunate, it was wrong, but we've had our missteps as well. And so you have to understand where they're coming from. It is winner takes all for them, and they are more patient than we are.
Most of our enemies are. When you look at Al-Qaeda and ISIS like terrorist groups, they patiently wait for the time to strike. Having said that, the adversaries that we do have, not China notwithstanding, there's also Iran, there's also Russia, North Korea. You ran for president this year, and what were your concerns about America and our relationship with our adversaries?
Well, I can tell you that we're our biggest and worst enemy. Many foreign nations know we cannot be trusted. They usually can predict how we're going to respond or how we're going to act. They are usually more calculating than we are. American leadership seems to be mostly emotional in its responses more than strategic, and that therein lies the difference. I think that comes, Kelly, from us raising generations of influencers, not leaders, and that's what we have leading the nation in so many regards. Even in the business world, in the political world, that is the situation we face today. As it relates to our foreign adversaries, my expertise is obviously in national security, both foreign, home and abroad, and on the African continent, in Asia and Eastern Europe. And I was in Ukraine a few months ago and just hosted the Ukraine delegation to the United States 2 weeks ago here in the homeland. And I can tell you that yes, these are all adversaries, but they are forming and coalescing a lot faster and stronger than the United States. And on every front. This is not just a military thing. This is economic. This is BRICS. And we are the main recruiting tool for BRICS and for the overthrow, because we have abused our power much of the time through the State Department, through sanctions, through the heavy hand of dollar manipulation. That is the biggest incentive for our adversaries even if they are enemies to each other, to come together just to defeat the behemoth, which is the United States of America.
You suspended your campaign. You know Donald Trump personally. You've had dealings with him. I'm not sure if you know the vice president, but you ran from the standpoint of what you believe is right and good for America, and that's God and putting the country first and taking care of things that we need to, having a good balance of our relationships, as well as putting adversaries on notice that we will correct our posture and stand stronger.
That's right. I felt like the best way to protect and defend the United States of America and every family and child in it was to do right by each other first, and then do right by other nations as well. When you do wrong by people, that is when people take you to court. That's when they sue you. That's when you create enemies, is when you wrong another person. And so one of the best ways we can defend the United and protect the United States of America is not more technology, not more weapons, not bigger jets and faster jets. One of the best ways is to start doing right by our citizenry first, and then by all other nations. And of course, we can only do that with the help of God, because we are past the point, Kelly, of just tweaking different policies. We are past the point in this country of just making minor adjustments. The corruption is so deep inside of the two-party corporations that the issue does not lie with our form of government. The problem lies with the heart and the character of the leaders who run our form of government. And so we have two polar opposites with Donald Trump and Kamala Harris. If Republicans win, then both sides will contest, no matter who wins at this point. And it leads to a lot of other issues. We won't know who the president is November 6th. We'll find out more on the Electoral College December 17th. But then we're going to find out more on January 6th again. Will they certify, with some of the states that are allowing illegal immigrants to vote, will the Congress certify a state's votes if they had allowed voting that was contrary to the Constitution of the United States of America? So there are even states' rights issues that can be brought up versus the United States Constitution. But if Kamala Harris wins, there is a contingent, I believe, in the United States that it will further erode their trust in government. And we saw just a snippet of where their emotions lie and what they're willing to do. And so I do believe there was not a United States of America 300 years from now, and there is likely not to be a United States of America 300 years from now if we don't start looking at the bigger picture. When you have candidates that, when people say, well, I'm voting, let's say for Trump because he's better on the economy, I'm looking past having 2 years of cheaper gas prices and more affordable food. I plan, what does the next 40 years of my life look like? What does the next 90 years, God willing, of my son's life look like? And the centuries beyond that of our grandchildren and our offspring, in our posterity? What kind of an America are we building and creating and leaving? And everyone is focused. We have a stock market mentality. What's the next quarter look like?
And both parties are to blame for where we've come as a nation. And as a result of that, both leaders of the party, which would be those who are running for president, they have a lot at stake. Do you think they have made a case to the American people that gives them some assurance that regardless of who wins, this nation will stand to become better?
No, sir. In fact, on either side, I can tell you that both of them have their 10 to 15% most loyal base where they can do absolutely anything and they will be supported and defended to the death. Both of them have that. There is 70% of Americans in the middle, either left-leaning or right-leaning, but 70% in that middle of common sense, practical, what is best for our nation and for the most people in our country. They're for common sense policy. They're for common sense principles. They're for decency. They're not arguing over what is a female. They're not arguing over the folly of life. They're focused on actually building something and creating something. And they want a better life. And that does not stem from government. That comes from leadership. And so that's why I go back to Psalm 9:17, that every nation that refuses to acknowledge God will be destroyed. He has done it before. He will do it again. And so we have fundamentally chosen as a society to, by and large, reject God, especially in the public square. And many even deny his very existence. And the precedent and the premise, really, of for any country on earth that wants to succeed, the first rule in helping your nation succeed is to acknowledge God. That is a fundamental in all 50 of our state constitutions and preambles. It references either Almighty God or the sovereigns in our need of him to be successful. And obviously our founding documents do as well. So our founding fathers clearly understood that no country lasts without acknowledging God. And I'll tell you, there's two other places where who's to blame for this? It always lies with the pastors and the priests first, Ezekiel 22. And then also it lies then with the politicians, and then it lies with the people. So we have a shared responsibility. There's a shared guilt. And then, of course, I think that the Christian vote is one of the most key differentials in our election system.
We're coming back with more on America's Hope next. And that's what you based it on. You bring a lot of credentials, and many people wrote you off from the beginning. Why did you run?
Well, I ran because I knew that I was called to run, and I still know that it was the right decision. And at his appointed time, he will set me where he wants to be. So it was a success in every way imaginable from our perspective, because we were obedient to a call that we knew for such a time as this. There is a lot of pain, there's a lot of suffering, there's a lot of hurting people, and not just in America, but all over the world. In America and this world needs leadership, they need light, and we don't have a lot of options when it comes to the president of this country and of the free world. That is a beacon of hope and light. Usually they are nothing but a symbol of division and of my side and my way is always right, and leading with a heavy hand. And so I wanted to lead with discernment and wisdom and good governance and doing right by people and others. And then at the same time, acknowledging the God of heaven. And I think that is the recipe for a successful nation. That's this recipe to keep people safe. It's the recipe to keep people prosperous and to help them grow economically and financially, for them to have a better retirement and a better life and to raise better children, better prepared children. That is the way forward, both for our education and for our social policy and in every way. And so I wanted to take that stand for what we knew is right. Proverbs 14:34 says that righteousness exalteth a nation. That is, if we want economic growth and prosperity, righteousness is the answer. And there's not very many qualified people who can even speak to this, Kelly, but yet that is one of the biggest dynamics into if a nation's going to be successful or not.
And yet, over the past few months, we seem to have missed that message. We've heard from Donald Trump, we've heard from Kamala Harris, and we've heard their messages. Right now, we know that John Kelly is speaking about the man that he formerly served as president. And he has not had too kind things to say about that. What do you think about the statement from John Kelly that about fascism, about the former president of the United States?
Well, there's been a lot of careless rhetoric that has been the source of a lot of speculation. Obviously, even beginning with January 6th and before with tweets or what have you, and the issue is we know what's going to happen. We know that there is a lot of bitterness. You cannot come after a person. You cannot come after a man. The way the Department of Justice, the way that many of his adversaries have come after him, and think that he's just going to roll over. In his books, he says, if you hit me, I'm going to hit you twice as hard back. The problem is that's usually not a controlled hit. It's just kind of a reflex. which is one of the differences in our national security, and was one of the differences in how I respond to conflict. Is I'm going to not just punch back. I'm going to eliminate the problem. So I actually hit back a whole lot worse. The difference is, and harder, but the difference is it's not out of emotion. It's out of strategic calculation. And I think it's the emotional rhetoric and the emotional responses that many think are very childish in their nature that creates a lot of the problem. And that's hard to work for somebody like that. I mean, he had more turnover than any other presidential administration, which is a flaw. It's also a flaw to never make any changes, and that's what we have with both ends of the spectrum right now. The bottom line is,
speaking to the Democrat presidential candidate, which is Kamala Harris, and not making or suggesting that she's not making any changes, although she says it's time to turn the page, and that her candidacy or her presidency will not look like what she just did for the past 3.5 years with Joe Biden. So to get more specific here, we have a lot of undecided voters out there, as you know. And because you're a man of faith and you were running on a campaign of America Needs God, as you know, the Christian voters, the large evangelical base and Catholic base is huge. And then there's even the Jewish vote. They're all kind of fragmented right now because many of them are still undecided about these two people leading their parties towards the presidency of the United States. Is it about country over party, and is it about politics or governance over personality?
And is it faith over politics and personal opinion? Who will they serve? No man can serve two masters. So where is your allegiance going to lie? To your personal faith, to what you believe is right, or is it going to be to a party, or is it going to be to a personality and a person? To your point, Faith Wins is an organization that has said that nearly 50 million churchgoers aren't even registered to vote. They've spent the last several years and have registered over 1 million, but that's still 49 more million that aren't even registered. George Barna's research center out of Texas Arizona, just came out last week that 32 million Christians are going to sit this election out. 32 million, and that's regular churchgoers, not just in the broad category of people applying script. These are weekly churchgoers, and they're saying both are wrong, and they're rejecting this. They're rejecting the choices. That is a staggering. That's 17-18% of all the votes we expect to even be cast in this election. There's 200 million professing Christians in the United States in all of the different groups, and obviously 180 million probably likely voters this time. So it's going to be very interesting to see, where these chips fall.
Wow. Look, you've expressed some dire concerns about the future of our nation. Yet you're a man of faith, which means you still have hope for our nation. What is your hope for America?
My hope is that we acknowledge God in America again. And Kelly, it doesn't cost a penny. It doesn't need an act of Congress to do it. It takes men and women who will stand up and say, look, whether they believe or don't believe, we can at least acknowledge as being a human being that there is a higher power and that we need the help of Almighty God for the United States of America to continue and to thrive and to prosper. So there is hope in America, and there is hope for America, but we must be that salt and light.
You sound a lot like the Founding Fathers who put together that wonderful thing called the U.S. Constitution and the Declaration of Independence and Bill of Rights. Dr. Roland Roberts, thank you for joining us, and we'll have to have you back after the election and talk about the continuance of hope for America, regardless of who wins this presidential campaign. Thank you, sir.
Great to be with you, Kelly.
We're coming back with more in just a moment.